In this video, I'll be sharing with you a requested tutorial from my group on how to cut this stylish deep neckline dress with ruche. If this is something you like, kindly hit on the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Now to start, here is my pattern and I've marked my shoulder to bust, under bust and my shoulder to waistline. After marking this, the next step you're going to take is to mark your shoulder divided by 2. For this pattern, I'm not adding ½ inch. I'll just mark my shoulder divided by 2. And I'll come down by 1 inch. So I'm doing that so that it will enable me tighten the armhole area. I'll mark a basic neckline of 3 by 3 inches at this point. I'll go ahead to place my ruler and I'm going to connect from the neckline all the way down. Connect to the shoulder to that 1 inch you came down from. Next step is to find your chest line, which is the bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. I'll draw a straight line there and I'll go ahead to mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2 also at this point. Now after marking this, place your ruler and connect all the way up. Now I'll go ahead to divide what I have here into 2 equal parts. Come out by ½ inch. I'll place back my tape at my chest line and mark my bust circumference divided by 4. Go ahead to place your ruler, connect from your bust circumference divided by 4 to the midpoint and connect to the upper part. The next step I'm going to take is to start by marking my dart intake. So I'll go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches. I'm going to mark this all the way to the lower part of my pattern and I'll also mark this at the waistline. So after marking this, I'll place my ruler and draw a straight line. Now I'll go ahead to divide my shoulder into 2 and I'll mark and connect. So at first, while looking at this pattern, I felt it was just a bustier. So after marking this, I realized it was a princess dart bustier. But let's go ahead to mark our dart. I'll go ahead to mark 1 inch on both sides, or you can mark ½ inch here and 1.5. For a plus size, you can mark 1 inch at the front and 2 inches on the other side, or you can go ahead to mark 1.5 inches on both sides. Place my tape, connect from the bust to the under bust and connect at the other side of my pattern. So after I'm done marking this, I'll go ahead to outline my pattern. I'll place my tape and I'll measure where I want my neckline to start. So I'm going to go ahead to mark that point and I'll place my ruler to draw a straight line. After I'm done marking, the next step is to go ahead to clean that line I have running from the shoulder towards the bust area. Just like I said, when I was drafting out this pattern first, I felt it was just a bustier, but a closer look at the pattern, I realized is a princess dart, armhole princess dart. So from here, I'll mark the midpoint of my armhole and I will connect. The next step is to go ahead to mark ½ inch on both sides of my pattern and I will blend this out. I'll also blend this at the other side of my pattern. Now, after I'm done marking this, I'll go ahead to use my marker to outline. After outlining, this ½ inch dart intake on both sides, I'll replace it out by marking 1 inch and blend it to the armhole. Because when you're joining your pattern, the center part tends to be longer than that of the side. So that will make up for the side. I'll go ahead to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, then measure this dart intake here, replace and add my sewing allowance. Mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake I have here, replace and add my sewing allowance. Mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake I have there, replace and add my sewing allowance. Now I'll just go ahead and place my ruler and I will connect from the under bust to the upper part and down to the waistline. I'll mark my bust dart, and to get your bust dart is the difference from your shoulder to waist in front and your shoulder to waist at the back. My shoulder to waist in front is 17, while my shoulder to waist at the back is 15.5. If I minus 15.5 from 17, it will give me 1.5, which I connected towards the bust point area. Now, this is what I have, and from here I'll go ahead to mark where or how deep I want the neckline to be. And from this line here I'll go ahead to use my free hand to draw out the neckline. You can go ahead to make use of your pattern master or curve drill, but I'm just making use of my freehand sketch, and I'll be connecting this to the side. By connecting, I'll go ahead to blend it out very well, and I'll be creating like an armhole by that side of my pattern. Right now, also remember that my pattern is like -5 inches or -6 after my shoulder, and I'll blend out. This is just what you need for the front, and I'll go ahead to cut this out. If you have any question regarding this pattern drafting, please kindly go ahead to leave your question at the comment section. Blend out your darts while cutting this and match up your pattern, right? Then go ahead to cut out the rest of your pattern. And after cutting this, we'll move over to drafting that of the back, and we are also going to draft out the sleeve of this dress. So after cutting this, let's move over to the back pattern of this dress. For the back pattern, so I've gone ahead to mark out the zipper allowance for this dress for the back. For the zipper, you can use 1.5 to 2 inches for the zipper. Now, I also marked out my shoulder to bust line, shoulder to waist. So I also marked my shoulder divided by 2. If you notice, I add an armhole curve at this part of the pattern, which I'll just go ahead to connect, just like we did for the front when we marked out the armhole curve for the front. You're going to do the same thing. From your zipper, go ahead to mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches, which I'll mark this all the way down from the bust all the way to the waistline of my pattern. Now, after marking this, the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to mark 1/2 inch on both sides of the dart leg of my pattern. Now, I'm going to get my ruler. I'm going to connect this all the way to the upper part of my pattern. And I'll also go ahead to repeat this at the other side. Now, I'll insert my body measurement. At the bust, I'm going to go ahead to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. And after marking that, I'll go ahead to add my sewing allowance. Use any sewing allowance of your choice. Mark your waist circumference divided by 4 and go ahead to measure the dart intake you took out, replace and add your sewing allowance. Now I'm just going to connect. So also remember your shoulder to waist at the back is shorter than that of the front. Now I'll place my tape and mark that -5 we used for the front, and I'll go ahead to connect this all the way to the chest line. But before connecting, I'll come down by 1/2 inch and I'll place my curve drill to connect. And after I'm done connecting, this is what I have. Now let's go ahead to also mark out the zipper bulge at the back. Mark 1/2 inch here, and I'm going to connect it all the way going up to the upper part of the pattern this way. This is to tighten your pattern at the back, and I'll go ahead to cut this out. So if you have any questions so far, please go ahead to leave it at the comment section. And after cutting this out, you can cut out your darts or you blend it out. So I'll just go ahead to blend it almost all the way up so that I'll tighten the back neckline a bit. So now let's go ahead to mark my skirt pattern. For this pattern, I'm going to use this for the total length of the skirt, and I'm going to mark like 7 inches to get my hip point from the waistline. If you're a much taller person, please go ahead to use 8 inches to get your hip point. But I'm using 7 inches here, and I'll go ahead to place my ruler to draw a straight line. So I'll label my waist and the hip line, right? Now, after marking that, I'll go ahead to mark my waist circumference divided by 4. Then add any sewing allowance of your choice. Here I'll mark my hip circumference. Now while marking this, don't use your exact hip measurement. You can add 1 inch to it and then add your sewing allowance, or you add 1.5. This is because you're going to create like a ruch at this part and you don't want it to be tight. So I'll just land this to the lower part of my pattern I will not really make it fitted at the lower part also. And I will go ahead to also cut this out. So this is what I have on my pattern, and I'm going to use this also to draft the back pattern. So now let's say you want to create the ruche by the side. All you have to do is mark out where you're going to create the ruche. Now you're going to go ahead to add like a fabric underneath it. Now on that fabric, you sew a line at the middle, at the side, and at the other side. This is like creating a space for you to pass your elastic, or to pass like a thread underneath, or to make like a strap. So when you pass that strap, you can go ahead to drag it, or you can easily go ahead to just stitch your elastic by the side and it will ruche up. Now to cut the back pattern, fold your pattern and just add like a zipper at the back. Now let's go ahead to cut out the sleeve of this dress. So now I'll be using a freehand method to cut out the sleeve so that it will be easier to understand, because going through the process of like drafting it might be difficult. So now I'll go ahead to mark my sleeve cap height, and to get that is your bust circumference divided by 12 plus 0.5 inches, and I'll go ahead to draw out a line at that point, right? So after making that mark, I'll just outline it. Now the next step you need to consider is the sleeve of this dress. You notice that it went all the way to the shoulder to the other side. Now what you're going to have there won't be your exact measurement. Remember we did -5 from the shoulder, right? But because of the sleeve, you might go ahead to pass like elastic at that sleeve part, at the upper part. So remember we -5. You might, to avoid that part being tight, I'll just add like extra few inches. You can measure like 10 inches more, and then draw out a curve, and make sure that the curve is matching the armhole of your dress. Now after that, I'll just go ahead to cut this out. So this is what I have. So when cutting this out, also remember to add like an extension on top for your elastic casing. So now by the time you add your elastic to it, you're going to now place this. Let's say this is on fold. You cut out this pattern on fold. This side will go over to the other side, hang on the shoulder, then you sew this to the armhole of the dress, and then add an elastic at the lower part.